Thank you. I'm going to be talking about criminalization in relation to both child marriage laws as well as the age of consent, and I see the two being um, historically and in contemporary usage very entwined. But before I begin, I do want to say that um, I don't believe that criminalization per se is the problem or is bad, because women's movement has struggled for years to have sexual violence and domestic violence recognized as criminal offenses, to get accountability from private actors of what has not been treated as wrong socially. So criminalization has had its value and continues to have its value. But what we are seeing now is an expansive use of criminalization by which almost all social issues are being tackled, and in ways that the state arrogates to itself what is right for the victims without giving the victims any voice in the matter. So the victims don't get to choose from an array of remedies that they might want to that might work for them, but they get positioned in a way where they're completely silenced and passive. So let's look at really what is happening with the child marriage issue. Historically, we, when in the colonial times, we really had an age of consent, not age of marriage. And gradually, only in 1929, we got the first law on setting an age for marriage. So it was the age of consent that was working so far. And for the last many years, we've had a lower age of consent from the age of marriage, which has been 18 years for girls, 21 years for boys. But the age of consent was 16 years. And what happened in 1912 is, with the introduction of child sexual offences law, again, with a very well-intentioned law, very necessary law, to fill a legislative vacuum on child sexual abuse. When the law came in, the age of sexual consent was increased from 16 to 18, and it essentially took away the right of all adolescents to express themselves sexually in any manner. So anything from kissing to caressing to sexual intercourse was turned into a crime. So in effect, all of adolescent sexuality is criminalized, and the age of marriage for girls is the same as the age of consent. And that is the law as it stands. The child marriage law also treats most underage marriages as voidable, which is an important fact, because voidable really, theoretically at least, gives the young underage parties to marriage the choice to exit from marriage or to declare it void. And there are other rights. There's certain kinds of marriages which are considered void completely, as in having no legal status. Now, the social context in the country is that marriage is still compulsory for girls for their social and economic survival. We have, although more girls are within education now, what we have is one of the lowest rates of women in the workforce, and it's dropping now in a post-COVID scenario with the economic crisis and unemployment becoming rampant. So, so none of these issues, the idea of compulsory nature of marriage or the lack of employment, or are sort of addressed in the child marriage basket. The child marriage law is only concerned with fixing an age. And at this time, at this juncture, as uh, we've just we are just going through processes uh, uh, which are deliberating on whether the child marriage law should change to increase the age of marriage of girls to 21 years as the minimum, and to convert all underage marriages to render them void, which is to have no legal effect at all. And all this is being introduced to address what the state sees as girls dropping out of schools, maternal mortality, as well as infant mortality issues. But let's see really whether the law is a solution at all, and also how is the law that we have, how has that been working? So PLD undertook a study of how the law is working. And if we look at 10 years, if we look at the macro data on crime records, we see that not enough cases under the Child Marriage Act are registered. But if we look at the qualitative study of what are the kinds of cases that go in, and we've looked at 10 years of the cases that have gone in, we've seen that the law is primarily being used across 10 years by parents against elopements. So for us, when we see this data, the question was, then what are girls doing who really want to escape a forced marriage? And for that, we did an extensive documentation with community organizations and youth groups that are working with adolescents and young people to find that when a girl wants to evade the prospect of a arranged or forced marriage, her best bet is not to go to the police. Ironically, it is the police which will leak the information to her parents, and which renders her much more vulnerable. Where she stands the best chances in terms of prevention is by going to these community organizations and NGOs, who then invoke multiple agencies such as the district administration, the police, the shelter homes, and so on, child protection services, to then delay the marriage or to stop the marriage. And they use the law informally, not formally. Formal use of law invites immense backlash on the family as well as girls, including really heavy fines, which the law doesn't even consider or recognize. So a lot of these interventions use the law only to leverage and dialogue, and end up working much better for girls because they ensure that the girl's future life is in a sense they monitor that in terms of ensuring she's educated. When we looked at elopements, because what we are seeing is that there's a huge number of cases that are in court, both under child sexual offences as well as under child marriage laws, which pertain to elopement. So we did a qualitative study to find that most elopements are not really choice, but they are really happening in situations of desperation, where the girl is either trying to flee a forced marriage, or she's discovers a pregnancy, or her relationship and her boyfriend is discovered, which means she stands to be separated and punished. So we see that elopements are also occurring within contexts of socioeconomic deprivation, marginalization, and high levels of insecurity, and they are really an outcome. They're really acts of escape. Now, instead of addressing any of these situations, the law is sort of using age as its only handle or only indicator. So there's nothing that the law provides in terms of for elopements or no specific action against forced marriage. And ironically, there is nothing that the law provides for married underage girls. So one would imagine if underage girls who are married are seen as victimized, and indeed they are more vulnerable, then what does the law really mandate in terms of provisioning support services, mandatory schooling? None of that is in place, which potentially the law can address and provide for. So at this juncture, when we have a law reform proposal before us, which says that which proposes to increase the minimum age of marriage to 21 and render all underage marriages void, what is it going to do? It will criminalize a larger set of actors. We don't know, but the fact that it will render underage marriages void means that a lot of girls who will continue to have to marry because of the lack of opportunities and poverty, which pushes them into early adulthood, will actually be denied a social status, although they are married, and will be denied matrimonial rights because there will be no legal protection anymore available if the marriage does not exist in law. So it baffles the mind how such a move could possibly protect and ensure safety of young girls if the girls are at the center and at the heart of such a move. Clearly, this is a very troubling development, and it comes at a time when we are seeing an economic crisis. It also comes at a time when the macro data suggests that child marriage has actually given way to early marriage, and that there is already a shift in older adolescents getting married, and a decline in younger adolescents getting married. So instead of accelerating this shift by providing perhaps compulsory education and vocational training opportunities for girls until they are 22 or 21, which bridges with employment opportunities, we have the specter of criminalization and the loss of status, which will singularly affect the underprivileged and marginalized communities, because we see that in the use of law, what is most worrying is that when the law is used against eloping couples, the boys or the husbands in these marriages get charged with heinous offenses like rape and kidnapping, which come with crippling high sentences. So I think it does beg the question, who is this law trying to protect? Is law an answer if underage marriages are the result of impoverishment and insecurity? Is law and criminalization really the answer? Thank you.